In the rogue that I have, um, you can see that down here, the last draw. Let's go to the last couple, 3 or 4. You'll be able to see the last draws and the dates. The rogue values over here are not right. Whenever I open up the rogue program and I click open, I added the Florida 536. So both of the first two work. The first problem is I can't get into the Powerball. When I double click it to open it or to load it, it gives me this here, and I don't know why it says rogue right up here, so maybe the problem is in the rogue for that game. If I try to open up the Mega Millions, it says the index is outside the bounds of the array, and again that is in the rogue. So I don't know if it's because there's a few more rogues here that are missing. I don't know if it's 14 rogues or just 12. I'm not real sure. I would think there's only 12, but I don't really know. Because if I open up like my Florida 536, or let me open up the California because you guys have that one. So whenever I'm opening up the 539 game for the California draw, there's only 10 rogue values. So I don't know how many rogue values there is for the Mega Millions or the Powerball. That may be the issue. I'm not real sure. But because of the information that I got, I'm going to load the Florida 536 game here. As soon as it loads, everything just transferred over. Okay, you can see this last digit right here. If I bring in my program here, you can see that the last one here is for the 1, 7, 14, 16, 30. It gives you your Lexi number and the rogue number. The last digit is a 0. Over here, the last digit is a 1. So if I try to squeeze these over a little bit, so we're keeping all the information on the screen here, you can see that the last digit is a 0. So we got a 0, 0, 1, 2, 2, 0, 3, 3, 2, 0. We got 0, 0, 1, 2, 2, 0, 3, 3, 2, 1. The one before that is a 2 and it shows a 3. A 2 and it shows a 3. A 0 shows a 1, and a 1 and it shows a 2. Like for 610. The 5, 7, 11, 23, 26. You can see it's 5, 7, 11, 23, 26. The last digit is not figuring right. So basically that's the issue that I'm having. If you look at any of the last digits here, so like for the last draw here, the 1, 7, 14, 16, 30, 1, 7, 14, 16, 30, this last digit's not coming up right. It's 1 off on all the draws. So even if I was to click over here and just pick a random one, let's say on 514, which is this one here, 514, it's got it as a 1. If I go over here and go down to 514, it's got it as a 2, and it's the same number. The 514 should be 514 should be 6, 9, 19, 23, 36. And this number here is not even close, actually. And I'm sorry, it wasn't a 514, that's a 5-4. So let's go down here to the 5-4. So over here, 6, 9, 19, 23, 36. 6, 9, 19, 23, 36. The last digit here is a 1. Okay, that one there. Let's look at that for a second. The last digit here is a 1, but the one before that is off. Wait a minute. 5. Everything changed when I clicked it, I guess. So the 6, 19, 23, 36. The 6, 9, 19, 23, 36. Last digit here is showing a 1. On 5, 4, 6, 9, 19, 23, 36, the last digit's showing a 2. So that's where that problem is in the last digit. This last digit is not figuring correctly. I'm not sure why. If I go back over here to my Rogue and actually go to the Rogue value and reset all my filters so it shows you all 376,992 sets. The very first Rogue for a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 should be zeros. Maybe in the program it's not accepting that all zeros and it starts at 1. So everything's going to be one digit off. That's where I would probably look for the problem to be. Is in your very first set. So if you say your winner is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I have a feeling that it's going to have all zeros and a 1 here, which is going to throw off everything else by one digit. That's where I believe the problem is. I don't know how to go about if I let's go back up here to the very top and change. I mean, obviously we're not going to have a draw that shows, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we go down, if we just retype in this particular value, so if we go to the Rogue and we say we want a 0, 0, 1, 2, 2, 0, 3, 3, 2, and if we put this 1 in here instead of the 0 that it actually was and have it compute it. Like I said, I don't know why the Powerball and the Mega Millions will not load at all. That gives us one set. The one set shows 1, 7, 14, 16, and 30. 1, 7, 14, 16, and 30. But that 0 is not right. So if I put that last digit as a 0, like it actually came up, and then push the compute again, click view, it's one digit off, the 1, 7, 14, 16, 29 instead of the 30. So I have a feeling, like I said, I have a feeling the very first Rogue is all zeros. So I have a feeling that that's the problem. Instead of starting with all zeros, it starts with a 1 and then of course goes up from there. So that's where I would look for that particular problem to exist. Obviously, if I try to put it in, you can see where it. Let's go up here to the very first one. You can see that it's a 0 on the end instead of the 1. So that's going to throw your number off. The 1, 7, 14, 16, and 30. Bring it down here, line it up. The 1, 7, 14, 16, and 30. You can look at the, look at your binaries, and you can see that it's one digit off. Instead of a 0 being on the end, it's got a 1. So if I actually put the 0 in this last digit, if I put it a 0 here, the number comes up and it's one digit off. Instead of being the 1, 7, 14, 16, 30, it's coming up. It's coming up wrong because I put a 0 in here, but by rights it's supposed to be a 0. So my number's not going to show up correctly. If I put the 1 there, obviously my number's going to come up. But that digit there, and like I said, it doesn't really matter which one you check. If you just scroll down a couple here, it doesn't really matter which one you go to. So if I go to, say, the first day of the month, the 6-1, it shows a 2 for the last digit. If I go down here to a 6-1, it shows a 3. So that's the only column that is off by 1. Like I said, the next thing is, it won't let me open up the Powerball, and it won't let me open up the Mega Millions. It says that it's out of the array or whatever. I can open up the Florida or the California Fantasy Fives without a problem, but we are really interested in the Powerball and the Mega Millions for this pool thing. So that's the ones that we need to work on. The next thing that would be nice is another tab right up here that shows a repeat. So if my my number for last night, let me bring that back up. Let me load my 536 game. So if I am doing, let's say, the rogue only, because that's what this is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 positions. If I say, and you can see that it's 376,992. If I select a 0 or a 1, is it going to have any repeat digits from the draw before? I'm going to say 0. So whenever I click 0, it all of a sudden knocked my pool down in half. It's only going to be 169,911 possibilities. So I'm going to try to move this over a little bit so I can bring this one on, move it over here so I can put these in. The numbers are just by selecting one, it went from 169 to 127,000. And of course it'll keep going down as I'm putting this number here in, but I don't want to put that as a 1. I want that to be a 0. So just the first two rogue values and the repeats set to a 0, I'm down to 35,000 sets. So if I can sit here and go through here and set all of them to the exact value, which we won't do. We're going to pick 2 or 3 from here. We'll pick 2 or 3 from the Lexi and 2 or 3 from the binary. But if we have an option to select either 0 repeats or at least 1 digit repeating from the previous draw, you can see that there's no digit that repeated on this particular draw. There's no no digit that repeated on this draw. There's one digit that repeated on this draw, which was the 34. So in that case, we would have wanted a 1. By selecting a 1, it'd knock you down from 372,000 whatever down to 154,000. But selecting the first 3 rogue values knocked us down to 8,700 lines basically. So 1, 2, 3. I'm doing number 4 now, which is going to be a 2. I want to do the next one, which is also a 2. And that knocks us down to 587 sets just by setting the first 5 of them and selecting the fact that we have 0 repeats. If I don't do the repeats at this stage in the game, then that's going to change this value dramatically. It's cutting it in half basically by showing whether it's going to have any repeats or not. So I click 0 repeats from the previous draw, so it's going to eliminate all the possible numbers that have any of the repeated numbers from the previous draw. So I have 587. The next one is a 0, I think. And then a 3, which some of these are only going to have one option. This one here's going to be a 3. And that was something else too. Whenever it comes to the options, the selections, like this one I didn't have to set because it took away all the possibilities. You can see here where a 0, 1, or a 3 is the only other ones left, so it eliminated the 2 as an option. I can't choose a 2 because that one's no longer an option because the 2 probably brought back a number that was a repeat from the previous draw, so I can't use that. But if I was to put a 1 here, as the program shows, I'm going to be off by a digit. In this particular case, it'd be 1 higher instead of 1 lower. But that's probably because I don't know why. Because if it came up a 1 instead of a 0, actually over here is wrong. So if that was a 0, that would be our actual lottery number, which is that one right there. But with it being a 1 right there, it should have come up that right there. So over here, like I said, if we put an extra bin in here to eliminate all possible numbers that have a repeat, or have the option of a repeat or a non-repeat, that cuts your options in half. So even if I was to thought I had some picked over here, but I guess I didn't. I changed it, I guess. But if we had a repeat over here and maybe a delete, but like I said, the add button does not work. Even if I drop down my date and change the date, I still can't add anything through that option. This option here doesn't seem to do anything. So you have to go into your file to change. A repeat tab here with these being fixed, and like I said, I believe it's probably due to the very first rogue, which is all zeros for a lottery number of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even though it won't happen, it really needs to be in the program just so the last digit figures correctly. Just so the last one will absolutely, figure right. it doesn't like me recording and trying to do this at the same time. But if it was all zeros, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's all zeros and not a 1 on the end. Like I said, I think that's probably where the problem is. So that's where I'd start. But like I said, I've done everything as far as I know. I am having problems with my mouse. If I double click my tab, it shows you the Rogue, and then if I double click that, there's my games. But if I try to open, I've got the Florida 536 loaded up there now. If I click the Mega Millions, it gives me a index was outside the bounds of the array. If I try to open up Powerball, and it gives me a little different information here. Both of them, I don't know, they seem to be, maybe it's just because this is the Rogue program, that's why it says Rogue up there, and it don't have nothing to do with the Rogue. If I exit out and open up just this file and go to just the games, you can see that I do have the Powerball, all the information in there loaded. As far as I know, it's loaded correctly. It was the file that was sent to me. If I do the Mega Millions, it's basically the same thing. It's a file that was sent to me for the Mega Millions. If I do the Florida 536, and if I do the California, everything seems to be good on that end. But whenever I try to open up the Powerball, it just doesn't open. And if I open up the Mega Millions, it doesn't open. So whenever I load up, like the California draw, it loads up pretty quick. Everything seems to be right, except for this last Rogue position. And I have a California Rogue program, but because it still has the formulas in it and it's so large, it takes a few minutes. I mean, it literally will take 4 minutes for me to get it to load up on my screen. So, but the last digit's wrong on it also. So, but I have a feeling it's because the 00 Rogue, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Rogue starts with all zeros and not a 1 on the end. So that is throwing everything off by 1 digit. See why this here doesn't work, and maybe a repeat filter. So when we click the repeat, it'll either be a 0 or a 1 option to not draw any numbers from the previous draw. Like this particular draw here, it did have 1 repeat from one to the next one. The time before that had 1 repeat from the next one. Time before that had 1 repeat from the next one. Time before that didn't show any repeats, so that would have been a 0, but the rest of them would have been 1s. And that cuts your options down in half, literally. And then whenever you go to choose when you go to choose one, like if I chose let's say I'm just going to throw some in here real quick. Oops, I don't want that one. I want that one. If I do a 0, 1, 1, 0, and then I go over here to my Rogue, and let's say that my decision on my Rogue was a little off. I know that should be a 1 because it's wrong, but even if I was off, even just like that last digit, so I'm just basically making some up here so it can generate a bunch of numbers real quick. That's without doing any of the Lexies. it keeps showing 0. It shows 0 because these are not an option. Even if I change that to a 2, so it would be right. A couple of these that I put in there is actually not an option because they don't match the binary. There is 562 because this binary here is correct at a 0. But if I look at my view, go to this first one, it should be a 3, 11, 15, 21. So we go down here to the 3, 11, 15, 22. It's not giving me the 21, 28. It's throwing it off. Everything is set correct. 0, 1, 1. And then this one here, it actually gives me both options. I'm not sure why, but so everything is here is correct. If I go to the rogue, it's off by 1 value because I have to, in order to get the winner, this rogue value here. But if you look up the actual rogue, if you actually look up the actual rogue, this is off by 1. So let's start with repairing that first before we worry about adding or deleting anything else. And let's get the program to where it'll load up these games. That's our first and most important thing, is get to where the games will load and that our information here is correct for the games that do load. First and foremost, before we worry about adding or anything to the program, let's see about getting this column. All the rest of them are correct except for this one, and like I said, it's probably because the in the coding it's not starting at all zeros, it's starting at a 0, 0, 0, or 1. But if that's the case, instead of having a starting at lottery number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, start at lottery number 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Do away with the very first lottery number, and that'll automatically correct all these. So hopefully this video helps and explains. Let's get that part of it fixed first, so we can pull some lottery numbers together and win that Powerball or the Mega Millions. That's the first most important part. This is my island in the background that I'm going to buy when we do win the lottery. I'm going to have a little nicer house on my island, but it's going to look real similar to this. So let's get her fixed so we can win.